This is Gitchigami, or Lake Superior in the northern Great Lakes region of Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Canada, where my people live. My people are called the Anishinaabe, or the Ojibwe tribe, but in English we are often called the Chippewa Indians. Have you ever heard of the Chippewa or other Indian tribes? Today, the Ojibwe people are the second largest tribe in North America, and we continue to live in the Great Lakes region. My people have always hunted and gathered food from the land from season to season. Have you ever gathered any food from the land? Long ago, my Ojibwe ancestors gathered the gifts of food in the spring season. Ziguan. Spring. When the snow melts, the sap in the maple trees begins to flow. Long ago, in the spring, my Ojibwe ancestors would move their camp of round wigwam houses to a grove of maple trees. This is where they went to gather the sap to make maple syrup and maple sugar. The Ojibwe children, long ago, walked from a camp to gather the maple sap. First, they put a small gift on the ground to thank the maple tree for the sap. The children poured the sap into containers made from the bark, or the outside skin, of birch trees. The men would gather and prepare wood to make a fire. Everyone in the family helped with the work. Ojibwe children worked very hard. They were taught by their elders not to spill or waste the sap from the trees. The Ojibwe people put a cut in the maple tree, and the sap would drip out like clear water. They were happy that the spring season had come after a long winter. Now they would be able to eat some maple sugar. The sap had to be boiled over a fire for a long time before it became thick maple syrup. Later it became sticky, like taffy. Have you ever eaten any maple syrup or maple sugar? It tastes really sweet like candy. My people kept boiling the maple syrup until it became maple sugar. My people enjoyed the gift of the maple sugar in the spring. We have always been grateful for these gifts. Spring was also a time when Ojibwe ancestors went fishing at night in the shallow waters of the lakes. At night, fish swam into the warm, shallow waters near the shore of the lake, where my people could see them. They used a birch bark torch to light the way. The Ojibwe used a wooden spear to catch the fish. They fished all night long using a bright torch made from birch bark to help them see the fish in dark water. These were some of the traditional ways long ago that my people, the Ojibwe, gathered the gifts of maple sugar and the fish in the spring to help them survive. Today, my people, the Ojibwe, still continue to gather these gifts in the spring. How is it different now from the ways of my ancestors in the past? How is it the same? We do not live in wigwams now. We live in normal houses. Sometimes we bring a camper trailer or tent into the woods when we gather the maple sugar. Ojibwe families still go to the maple forest to harvest the maple sugar in the spring. Nowadays, schools bring students out to the maple forest to learn how to gather maple sap and to make maple sugar. We put an offering on the ground and say a prayer of thanks to the maple tree for the gift of the sap, just like our ancestors did long ago. Can you see what is being used to make a hole in a tree? Now we often use a modern drill to make a hole in the tree and a metal spigot to guide the sap into a container. Do the Ojibwe people still gather the sap in birch bark baskets? Today, the sap is gathered in metal cans. Everyone helps with the work. The children help too. We still have to cut a lot of wood to keep the fire going, so we can boil the sap down to the maple syrup and maple sugar. The sap is boiled in large metal kettles or in cans these days because they last longer than pottery or birch bark and are easier to get. Elders from the school and community teach the children how to boil the sap and to make the maple sugar. Now these students will continue this tradition when they grow up and have families. The maple sugar still tastes great even today. Spring is also the time when my people fish at night in the shallow water of the lakes like they did long ago. Do we still use birch bark canoes on the water today? Now we use metal boats instead of birch bark canoes to go onto the lakes. We use a sharp metal spear these days to catch the fish to eat. What kind of spear did we use long ago? Now we use an electric light instead of a birch bark torch to see the fish in the water at night. The Ojibwe people continue to receive the gifts of the fish and the maple sugar in the spring. We maintain our traditional connection to the land like our ancestors did long, long ago. We also have new ways of getting food besides these traditional ways. We go to grocery stores to buy some of our food. As Ojibwe people, we choose to mix our traditional ways from the past with the modern ways of living today. Does your family continue any traditions of your ancestors?
This is Gitchigami, or Lake Superior, in the northern Great Lakes region of Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Canada, where my people live. My people are called the Anishinaabe, or the Ojibwe tribe, but in English we are often called the Chippewa Indians. Have you ever heard of the Chippewa or any other Indian tribes? Today, the Ojibwe people are the second largest tribe in North America, and we continue to live in the Great Lakes region. My people have always hunted and gathered what they need from the land from season to season. Have you ever gathered something from the land? Long ago, my Ojibwe ancestors gathered gifts from the land in the summer season. Neben, summer. They traveled to their summer village near the birch trees and near the lakes. They went by boats called canoes that they made from the bark of birch trees. They paddled the canoes quickly along the river waterways and carried their possessions with them. The birch bark canoes were light and strong. Have you ever paddled a canoe? This was the summer village. Their round houses, called wigwams, were also made from the bark of birch trees. Summer is the only time of year that the bark comes off easily to make into canoes, houses, baskets, and other things. Have you ever seen a white birch tree? The white outer bark is like the skin of the tree. Before my people, the Ojibwe, peeled the bark from the birch trees, they put a small gift down to thank the tree for giving its skin so people could use it. The birch tree was called the Tree of Life by the Ojibwe because of the many gifts this tree gave to the people to use. To peel the bark in the summer, they had to cut along the tree through the outer layer of white bark with a stone knife. Then, they gently peeled the outer layer of white bark from the tree. It slipped off easily as a flat sheet. Underneath was the brown inner bark. Don't worry, the tree wasn't hurt when they carefully peeled only the white outer bark in the summer. The children learned from the adults and helped to peel the bark. They practiced the right way to peel the birch bark so they wouldn't harm the tree. The bark was very beautiful and a useful gift from the birch tree. It was strong, waterproof, and lightweight. It could easily be made into many different things. The Ojibwe made an interesting work of art from the birch bark. A sheet of birch bark was peeled into layers as thin as tissue paper. This thin layer of bark was folded carefully. Then they made bites with their teeth in the folded birch bark, creating a unique design. It tasted a lot like paper. When the bark was unfolded and held in the light, you could see the beautiful design. This was a tradition in the summer. This was done for fun or as a pattern for beadwork. Does the design look anything like a paper snowflake? They also made baskets from the strong sheets of birch bark. Holes were made in the bark for sewing with a sharp stone point. Roots were split to make cord for sewing the birch bark baskets. Girls learned from their mother, aunt, or grandmother how to make birch bark baskets. Everyone had to help in the summer work, even the children. The Ojibwe stored a lot of their food in these baskets. What do you store your food in? Summer was also the time of year they got together for fun because it was easy to travel in this season. My people, the Ojibwe, met other people in the summer and traded any extra birch bark they had for things that they needed. These were some of the traditional activities the Ojibwe practiced in the summer long ago. How do you think my people do things today? How are Ojibwe summer activities today different than long ago? How are they the same? Today we have cars to travel in, and we don't move when the season changes. Ojibwe families today still go into the forest in the summer to peel birch bark. Now, we don't wear clothing made by hand from deer hides like they did long ago. Some things have changed, but we still peel the birch bark in the same way my people did long ago. In the forest, we look for a straight and smooth tree to peel. We still place a small gift and say a little prayer to the birch tree to give thanks for the bark, just like my ancestors did a long time ago. My aunt is teaching my cousin how to peel the birch bark respectfully, so he doesn't hurt the tree. First, she cuts a little triangle of the bark to see if it is easy to peel. When it is warm enough in the summer, the bark peels easily. If it peels easily, she makes a long cut in the outer bark with a metal knife. Carefully, they peel the outer layer of white bark around the tree. The inner layer of the bark is brown and smooth like leather. It feels cool and wet. It slides off in a big sheet. My aunt peels only the outer white bark because it will not harm the tree. Children must always go with an experienced adult to peel bark from any tree today. There are fewer birch trees today than long ago. We must be very respectful of the birch trees, only gather what we need, and use all of it. Later, my aunt cuts the bark into the shape of a basket that she wants to make. She splits the roots to use for sewing the basket, like my ancestors did long ago. She puts holes in the bark for sewing with a metal tool called an awl. Have you ever made a basket? It takes a long time to make one. They are very beautiful containers, and they are treasured today by Ojibwe families. Now we come together to dance, while men drum at what we call a powwow. It is a lot of fun, and everyone dances. We trade and sell crafts at a powwow too. Sometimes you can find a birch bark basket to buy. You can find colorful beadwork too. As proud Ojibwe people, we continue many traditions from our past while practicing many new ones today. What are your family's summer traditions?
This is Gitchigami, or Lake Superior, in the northern Great Lakes region of Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Canada, where my ancestors have lived for hundreds of years. My people are called the Anishinaabe, or the Ojibwe tribe, but in English, we are often called the Chippewa. We prefer to be called the Ojibwe. Have you ever heard of the Ojibwe or the Chippewa? What other Native American nations can you name? My people have always hunted and gathered food from the land, from season to season. My people believe that the land gives us many gifts of food to survive. We have always been grateful for these gifts. Long ago, in the fall, my ancestors moved their camp to gather wild rice to eat for the whole year. The Gwagan. fall. This was the village where my people lived in the fall. Everyone helped with the work. Children worked hard and helped their parents get ready for the coming winter. Fathers taught their sons how to make fish traps from sticks. The trap had to be strong and lightweight so it could be moved easily. They put a rock in the trap to hold it down in the water. Fish would swim in and not be able to get out. This was a good way to catch fish in those days. Then they gathered wood for a fire to smoke the fish, so it would store for a long time. Men used a special wooden fire bowl by hand to start a fire. He moved the bowl back and forth to turn a stick very quickly on a baseboard until it got hot from rubbing. Fathers taught their sons how to make a fire this way. He put a little nest of twigs on the hot spot until it started a tiny fire. He kept blowing on the little fire until it became a bigger fire. The father put the fire in a small teepee made of bark. Making a fire in this way takes a lot of skill and patience. Then the women hung the fish over the fire in a small teepee. The fish were smoked in the little teepee for a day or two. The smoked and dried fish could be stored for a very long time without spoiling. Fall was also the time they gathered the wild rice that grew in the shallow waters of lakes and rivers. The wild rice was dried and roasted or heated over a fire. They poured the dried rice into a shallow hole in the ground. A man or boy danced on the rice with clean, soft shoes called moccasins. The dancing rubbed off the outer shell from the rice. Then the women shook the rice in a large flat basket, and the wind blew the outer shell of the wild rice away. Only the clean wild rice was left. The finished wild rice was stored in big baskets underground to use during the long winter. The wild rice was boiled in water over a fire until it was soft enough to eat. They made soup with the wild rice and fish. When the work was done, families played games like lacrosse, or Ojibwe in the Ojibwe language. Lacrosse is the oldest American sport and was invented by the Ojibwe. Lacrosse was a game that used a short stick that had a leather net on the end to catch and throw a wooden ball toward a goalpost. Everyone ran after the person with the ball. It was something like ice hockey, but without the ice and skates. What games do you play in the fall? The Guagan. Fall today. My people, the Ojibwe, still go fishing in this season, but now they use nets. Now, many families set their nets near their houses on lakes, using small motorboats instead of canoes. When they get home, the men take the fish from the nets one by one. Some Ojibwe people also fish in the Great Lake called Lake Superior or Gitchigami. They use large motorboats and large nets in the very deep water. Now, they pull in the big nets with machines and get the large fish quickly. Everyone helps sort and clean the fish from the nets. Today, the fresh fish is stored in a freezer instead of smoking it. Fall is still the time families go to gather wild rice. The rice still grows in the shallow waters of lakes and rivers. Before gathering any wild rice, we say a prayer of thanks for the rice and put a small gift in the water. 2 people go out together to gather the wild rice in a canoe. One person stands with a long pole to push through the shallow water in the thick wild rice beds. The other person knocks the wild rice into the boat with 2 long wooden ricing sticks. They move in the rhythm that is very beautiful across the wild rice bed as they gather wild rice in a canoe. Some of the wild rice falls back into the water. That is okay because it seeds the rice bed next year. Later at home, the rice is dried and roasted over a fire using a big metal pan. We have to keep stirring the wild rice so it doesn't burn over the fire. Everyone still helps with the work. It is a family activity, and even our dog is there to watch. Some Ojibwe people make their own machines to dry and clean the wild rice faster. You can now buy wild rice in a store too. My people, the Ojibwe, have a community feast in the fall, using the wild rice and deer meat to give thanks for all the gifts from the earth. Do you have a celebration and give thanks in the fall? What foods do you eat?
This is Gitchigami, or Lake Superior, in the northern Great Lakes region of Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Canada, where my people live. My people are called the Anishinaabe, or the Ojibwe tribe, but in English we are often called the Chippewa Indians. Today, the Ojibwe people are the second largest tribe in North America, and we continue to live in the Great Lakes region. There are 19 Ojibwe reservations in the United States and many more in Canada. From season to season, my people have always hunted and gathered what they need to survive. We always put a little gift down before we take anything from the land. My people believe that the food we gather is a gift, and we are very grateful for what we are given. Baboon, winter. In the past, it was difficult for my people to survive in the winter because of the cold and the deep snow. This was the village with round wigwam houses where my people lived in the winter. The people wore many furs to keep them warm. Families lived near each other for protection. Grandparents lived with the family and helped take care of the children. They burned a lot of wood to keep warm and to cook their food. They were always afraid that there might not be enough food to last through the whole winter. To survive, they needed the wild rice that was stored underground in the earlier fall season. Grandparents taught the children how to make snowshoes from the deerskin strips and bent cedar wood to walk in the deep snow. Children learned from their grandparents the traditional ways to survive in the harsh winter. The snowshoes helped them stay on top of the deep snow. Men hunted deer and other animals for food in the deep snow. Rabbits were an important source of meat for the people. The rabbits were caught in a snare trap that men made and placed in the forest where rabbits ran. It took great skill to set the snare and know just the right place to put it to catch a rabbit. Rabbits run along the same path over and over in the snow like a superhighway. That is where to put the snare to catch a rabbit to eat. The men also went ice fishing in the winter. It was a long walk on snowshoes across the frozen lake to find the right place to fish. A little teepee was built over a hole cut in the ice. They put a little hand-carved wooden fish decoy into the water to attract a big fish because it looks like food. Then they used a spear to get a fish to eat. Getting food in the winter took a lot of patience and hard work. Some days they had no fish or meat at all to eat. Women used the long winter to sew and make crafts. They made rope by braiding bark fiber. Grandmothers helped and taught the women and girls how to do the crafts correctly. Winter was also the time to sit by the fire and tell stories that taught the ideas and beliefs of the tribe. Grandparents were the respected keepers of the knowledge in the tribe. They told interesting stories as a way to teach the children during the long winter months. What is something that you do only in the winter? Baboon, Noongum, winter today. Today we live in warm, modern houses. The snow is still deep, and we still learn how to make different kinds of snowshoes to walk in the woods. People also set snares in the woods to catch rabbits today. We like traditional foods like rabbit and deer meat very much, even these days. Now, we do studies to know about the health and numbers of each kind of animal in the forest. Here, wildlife managers catch a marten, an animal like a weasel, in a live trap that doesn't hurt him. Then, they put the marten to sleep to measure him and put a radio collar around his neck. This collar sends signals back to the wildlife managers, who write down information about where the marten lives. This way, they make sure people don't trap too many marten in this area. Today, Ojibwe people still go out on the frozen lakes to spear fish through the ice. A little teepee is still built over a hole in the ice following the traditional ways. Then, they lay on the ice with their head inside the teepee to see down in the water to find a fish. A traditional, hand-carved wooden fish decoy is put into the water to attract a fish to come closer to the fisherman's spear. It takes a long time waiting to see a fish. This is what it looks like inside the teepee. Can you see the big musky fish down in the water? The spear just got him. Wow, look at the big fish he just speared. It takes a lot of work and skill to get fresh fish in the winter, but it is a lot of fun too. Today, we still make crafts in the winter like beadwork. Teachers in school also show boys and girls how to do beadwork in the winter. A loom can also be used for beadwork. Beads are counted and sewn in the order of a design. It takes a lot of time and patience to do beadwork. We use the beautiful beadwork to decorate the clothing we wear at traditional dances called powwows. Elderly men and women of the tribe continue to be highly respected, and they still tell stories in the winter to teach children about Ojibwe traditions and history. We keep our Ojibwe heritage alive by teaching our children the stories and the traditional activities throughout the 4 seasons. In the future, our children will teach their children to continue the proud traditions of the Anishinaabe Ojibwe people of the Northern Great Lakes region. How do you learn about your family history and traditions?